All right, welcome back to the channel, everybody. And if you remember my video from yesterday, we talked about AI hype and how, in my opinion, the AI hype has gotten out of control. I mean, look, what I was trying to say in that video is that yes, I believe it's going to play a major impact long term. It will. But I think people are moving way too quick with this stuff. So when it comes to AI, think of it like the internet. We are just in the beginning stages here with the large language models. Now, we haven't even gotten into AI agents and all that kind of stuff. And they're talking about how these AI agents are going to be coming out in the next 6 to 12 months and that everybody's going to lose their job. Not everybody, but you get the point. They're talking massive job losses. In fact, they are, look at this. People see a headline like this. Meta will reportedly soon use AI for most product risk assessments instead of human reviewers. So I think another headline said like 90% of people are going to be replaced by AI. So people see a headline like this and they think, well, crap, now my job's in jeopardy. Now I need to be fearful. But the thing about all this news and all this stuff coming out is that there is a hidden agenda. And in my opinion, and I could be wrong on this, but my opinion is, yes, these companies are investing in AI, but think about all these other things they were pushing as well in the past. Cloud computing, NFTs, the metaverse, right? Remember the metaverse and all that, how big that was going to be, and then people just didn't go for it. People didn't trust it. And I think that's the problem with AI. A lot of people are growing weary of this stuff, and all we hear about is AI. So the trust factor is just not there. And people don't trust these systems anyway a lot of times because they hallucinate. And there's a lot of issues. And then you get into the cybersecurity and you get into all of the problems where, in my opinion, this is where we're at with AI. Now, this was the technology hype that we saw in the 1990s. So when we're looking at this, just remember, we are looking at bold promises. We're looking at what's actually commercially viable. So this first paragraph, when new technologies make bold promises, how do you discern the hype from what's commercially viable? And when will such claims pay off, if at all? The Gartner hype cycle provides a graphic representation of the maturity and adoption of technologies and applications and how they are potentially relevant to solving real-world business problems and exploring new opportunities. Gartner hype cycle methodology gives you a view of how a technology or application will evolve over time, providing a sound source of insight to manage its deployment within the context of your specific business goals. Now, I'm not going to read through all of this, but basically, if you look at the 5 major factors that are involved in this, we have the innovation trigger. So that was ChatGPT, the ChatGPT moment, as they say. Then we have the peak of the inflated expectations. So we have, basically number of success stories. Companies are taking action, some companies aren't. That's happening now. We also have the trail of disillusionment. So interest is waning and people are having these super high expectations and all this money's being pushed into it, but then the return on investment or the results that people are seeking do not materialize in the time frame that they are expecting. So they're saying within 18 to 24 months. I've seen all these major news channels talking about how 50% of AI jobs, or let's just say 20% of jobs are going to be gone within 18 months. But I don't think they're also considering how weary a lot of the smaller and mid-sized enterprises are of AI. I'm just saying, there is a trust factor, and yes, a lot of companies are encouraging their employees to utilize AI, but there's also a growing weariness and I think just a general resentment towards AI. That's what I've noticed. And people being authentic, like on YouTube, is becoming more popular, right? So there's this push towards more humanity, less machine. People like authenticity. So that's another barrier I see with AI. And I go on, but this is the third major thing. I think we're in the peak of inflated expectations right now, personally. I think this has been a hype cycle going on since late 2022 when we had that ChatGPT moment. We have the disillusionment that's approaching, and then this might be, the next 5 years afterwards. And then we get into the Enlightenment, right? So there's more, it's kind of like Amazon, right? Back in the early 2000s. It went through a dip. The stock price went down 90%, but it did rebound and investors made a lot of money. So then you have, a plateau after that. So this is all part of the cycle. There's actually a chart I had pulled up too. And it's the same thing, right? So here it is. And it's the same thing in the stock market, right? You can take this anywhere. And here it is. So research and development, startup companies, first round of venture capital, first generation, early adopters, mass media. And this is where we're at right here. Like I said, we're at the peak hype cycle. The mass media hype is out. We are in this. And I don't care what anybody says. In my personal opinion, and I will stand on this hill, okay? Or die on this, whatever it is, whatever they say. Look, AI is not going to be as extreme as people say it is right now within the next 5 years. That's my personal opinion. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And maybe AI replaces 90% of people within the next 24 to 36 months. And I'm, totally wrong on this. But I think we are at this mass media cycle. We are right there. And you're seeing it everywhere. You're seeing all these CEOs coming on talking about AI, talking about how it's going to be this, talking about how, we're going to be, it's just, I could go on. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I find this interesting, right? And if you actually want to go over to the AI overview, we should have started with AI. This is all about AI, right? But the AI overview, according to Google, which used to be just a regular overview, now they call it the AI overview. Because remember back in like 2017, it was kind of the same thing. You just had different websites feeding you the information. But that's pretty much how this technology works anyway. Right? So they just basically are taking all this from the web and building a neural network or brain. And anyway, the Gartner hype cycle is a framework that illustrates the life cycle of a technology, showing how it progresses from initial excitement to widespread adoption. It typically includes 5 phases: innovation, trigger, peak of inflated expectations, trial of disillusionment, slope of enlightenment, and plateau of productivity. So once again, you can read over this. It's the same thing we just talked about, but this was actually developed in I think it was, when was it developed? I'm sure AI overview is going to come up first, of course. 1995. So this was during the peak of the dot-com bubble is when this was, not the peak, I'm sorry, but this is when the dot-com bubble really was starting to take off. Okay, so interesting that it came out right when that happened. And we're seeing, I think, a similar pattern because people were so pumped about the internet. I mean, it was the biggest thing since sliced bread, right? Or the horse and buggy. And, I just think we're in this inflection point where there's all this money being invested and we're not really considering the long-term implications of where all this money is going. It's just being thrown around, hundreds of billions of dollars. And I think it's going to come crashing down eventually. Just like cloud computing, just like NFTs, just like all the other things that big tech was trying to push. And not just big tech, but, different cycles. Those are just a couple of examples. There's a lot more examples. But anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. And we will see you in the next video. Take care.